I am delighted to be here. My name is Joan Lombardi. I am just delighted to have partnered with the International Step-by-Step Association on the launch of Early Childhood Matters. The field is booming with new ideas, with new challenges. As we've seen a decline in child mortality, at the same time, we've seen new risks, worldwide pollution, unfortunate events around the world of war, migration on the rise of technology, all of these new challenges. Early childhood today is not about business as usual. It's not your grandmother's field anymore, even if I'm a grandmother. It is really about addressing new challenges and building new champions, unlikely champions from other fields. We're all ambassadors for young children. Our goal is that all children thrive everywhere, creating an enabling environment for their families, healthy communities, and supporting policies. This year, we've had a wonderful year in finding more than 32 articles. Each is a piece of a tapestry. We have them organized in 4 categories, as you'll see as you go through the journal. We start with leaders around the world, not just leaders from the early childhood field, but someone from the UN, someone from a foundation, the Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and the Mayor of Recife, Brazil. Those are the new voices for young children. It's way beyond us now. We also have scaling examples, a range of examples from infrastructure that we must put in place as we scale to workforce and financing, which are 2 sides of the same coin, to measurement and media. And on media, we're celebrating in this issue the 50th anniversary of Sesame Street, and I'll come back to that at the end of the panel. We have an array of innovations, several of which you'll hear today, special efforts to reach out to fathers, to use youth as part of our work, to use technology to manage our programs, and Urban 95 examples of city efforts around early childhood that are emerging around the world. We also have several global reports that we do synopsis of. I don't know if you're like me, but it seems like every day there's a new report in the field. It's very hard to keep up. We were able to highlight just a few of them, one on inclusive education, one on cash transfers, one on the role of transportation, and one on using drones to map the early childhood field. So again, it's not your grandmother's field. We're also really delighted to have partnered with ISA so that this year, along with translating the entire magazine into Spanish, we've worked with ISA members who have selected certain articles to be translated, and when you leave, you'll get a copy of those. Some of the articles have been translated into Romanian, Turkish, Russian, Armenian, Croatian, Ukrainian, Hungarian, and Bulgarian. We are delighted to make that announcement. I'll be introducing each of the panel. As I said to the panelists, this is like a tasting menu after you've had lunch. You'll get a snippet of 3 different articles. Remember, we have 32 articles in this journal. 2 of the examples are about how to reach fathers, which I think, I was thinking this morning when we were hearing that wonderful presentation about family engagement and family services, about how too often family engagement has really been about mother engagement. And we have 2 speakers to change that. We have a wonderful example from the Kyrgyz Republic, and we're thrilled to have an example of the good work that's going on in Central Asia. And then we have an article on working with youth, time to bring the generations together.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you so much for the ISA conference for hosting today. I will be speaking to you about Program P. Program P is one of the programs that Promundo, which is an NGO that works to engage men and boys alongside women and girls to reach gender equality for over 20 years now. It's one of the programmatic initiatives that Promundo carries. It is deeply based, it's rooted in the understanding that when parents expect their first child, and when they're young parents, they're at this moment of change and expectation. And it is, especially for fathers, a time when they might be more open to considering things about what it means to be a father, and more broadly, what it means to be a man. But as Joan was pointing out, and as I've come to learn throughout the years, parenting programs are focused much more on mothers, maybe due to recruitment barriers, but also, there's a need to understand the role of fathers. And this is the core understanding of Program P, which is a gender transformative approach at its core to engage expecting young fathers and their partners. It is based on the recognition that the beliefs related to gender affect family life. And for example, a belief might be that men are dominant and that they need to express their masculinity through that. And that is deeply related, as we have learned through the International Men and Gender Equality Survey in over 40 countries, to the use of intimate partner violence and violence against children. So the role of this program is to challenge these gender norms, and it aims to dismantle these inequitable power dynamics and build on the positive cultural norms that encourage not only responsiveness and engagement with the children, but a transformation within the gender dynamics in the household to reposition men as caring fathers and equal partners. Now, Program P, the name comes, P stands for pai or padre, which is father in Portuguese and Spanish, which is where originally this program was developed. It was developed as a collaboration between Red Mass, Instituto Promundo, and Cultura Salud in Latin America. And it's been adapted and implemented in over 15 countries and counting. And the core, while it contains lots of different components at the different levels of the socio-ecological model, at its core, the content has to do with participatory reflection and discussion in a group setting. The participants engage in role-playing and hands-on activities and practice equitable nonviolent behaviors. These components are quite flexible and adaptable to many contexts. So what they might be practicing and what they might be learning might look slightly different in the different contexts, and that's one of what we consider the strengths of this program. Now, in Rwanda, we conducted one adaptation of this program. It's called the Bandebereho Project, which translates to role model. And this curriculum was adapted with the collaboration of a local NGO as well as Ministry of Health. Again, this intervention recruited expecting and young fathers for 15 sessions, out of which 8 were in a couple with the partners present, touching topics that had to do with gender and power, fatherhood, couple communication, decision-making, intimate partner violence, caregiving, child development, and engaging men in maternal and child health. And the RCT evidence was very strong. Almost 2 years after the program, we saw nearly half the rates for the use of violence against women in the intervention group as compared to the control group. We also saw a decrease in the use of harsh punishment against children for both men and for women. And interestingly, we saw an increase in the time that men spend doing activities that promote child development, and also caregiving and domestic tasks, which ultimately reorders and balances the power dynamics in the home. Now, at the moment, we are scaling up this intervention with, again, the collaboration of Ministry of Health in Rwanda, and it will be implemented at scale in one full district through community health workers who will be trained to implement Program P and will be also trained to monitor certain ECD indicators. Just to mention, to finalize, that Program P is the programmatic aspect of a global fatherhood campaign, the Men Care campaign. And I encourage you to Google Men Care to watch the videos and the campaign materials, because it really is what we think a very strong departing point to reframe global debate around fatherhood and to normalize the roles of fathers as caregivers as they should be. Thank you.
Okay, so REAL stands for the Responsible, Engaged, and Loving Fathers Initiative. It was implemented in northern Uganda, and it's a really exciting program because it represents a handful of programs that are beginning to address violence against children and violence against women. We know that these two types of violence have overlapping risk factors. They also have similar health outcomes, and they're related to similar social norms, to mostly gender norms. So this project grew out of work that we were doing together called the GREAT Project, which was a program for 10 to 18-year-olds. Part of that project included formative research and life histories with young people. And we began to see that the young fathers had a lot of acute needs. They had a lot of concerns, a lot of needs. And some of the Save the Children staff, who were men, got very excited and interested in trying to develop something for these young fathers at this formative time in their life. So one of the things that we realized was that this program was taking place in the aftermath of a 25-year civil war. Most of the young fathers had grown up their whole life in internally displaced camps. They had seen around them all of their life very violent situations, and they'd come to learn that doing gender was the same thing as doing violence. So the idea was they were displaying or portraying their masculine identity by being harsh or controlling or violent with their wives and their children. So this project was an opportunity to interrupt this intergenerational transmission of violence from caregivers to children. We also learned that the men lacked the traditional structures that supported them to become fathers. Many of them, their fathers had died, their uncles had died, they had no land, so there was no sort of supportive structure around these young new fathers. So Real Fathers was developed in, I think I can go on to the next slide. Let's see. So yeah, Real Fathers was developed in 2012 by Save the Children and my organization, and it's gone on quite a journey since then. We started with a small pilot. The results of the pilot showed that we did a randomized clinical trial. They showed it was successful. Then we said, well, what's next? In order to really make a difference, we need to scale this up more broadly. So we decided to adapt it to be integrated into other programs. So we tried two programs. We did village savings and loans and early childhood development programs. So then what we did was we worked with those programs. We provided them training and materials, but not resources, and we asked them to integrate this program into their ongoing programs. We also adapted to a new region in Uganda, Karamoja, which is a semi-pastoral area, very low literacy, very kind of difficult setting, because we wanted to see if this program would hold, if the effectiveness would hold. So I'll tell you a little bit about the results at the end, but let me tell you a little bit about the program now. So we started based on what we know about what, at that point in 2012, what we knew about engaging caregivers, in particular fathers, and the formative research we had. So we developed this program that has 12 points of contact with young fathers over a 6-month period. It starts with finding the fathers, and it's entered into the community through some community structure, for example, the management committees that run the early childhood development programs. The committee are the ones that find the fathers. The fathers were young men who had children under the age of 3. So the idea was trying to reach new fathers. Then the fathers then selected their own mentors. So the fathers got together and they thought about, who in the community do I respect? Who do I want to mentor me? So those were the mentors. They were vetted by women to make sure that they would be kind of good role models, because the foundational principle behind REAL is role modeling and mentorship, similar to many other programs that work with fathers. So once the mentors were selected, they were then trained through about a 1-week training to play their role, to be a mentor. And their role consisted of mentoring 4 mentees, or 4 fathers. So each mentor had 4 fathers. They were volunteers as well. What they did was 1 home visit each month with a mentor and 1 group meeting. And they did this over a period of 6 months. So the 2 of the home visits over the 6-month period included their wives as well. Because we found from the beginning, we thought, it was going to be all about men, and the men were very clear. You need to engage our wives from the beginning. We need to get their permission. They need to be on board. things like, if we start doing these activities that they think are only for women, there's going to be problems in the family. And later on, the women became very excited because they also wanted to learn some of the new skills that the men were developing. So women became a little bit more engaged throughout the program. The other thing we knew is that it's not enough just for the men and for their wives to change. There has to be support at the community level for these changes. So we did these, they're kind of poster boards or billboards. We put up one in each village. They're using social marketing techniques or messages, emotion-based messages about kind of appealing to men and what we knew mattered to them, about being respected and being valued as a member of the community, as an adult member of the community. So those posters were unveiled at the group meeting. So there's one group meeting a month in which all the mentors and mentees came together. They discussed those messages, and it stayed up in the community for a month. Then the intervention cycle ended at 6 months with a community celebration. At the celebration, everyone came together. There was testimonies, the men talked, the women talked, the elders talked, and they sort of celebrated the changes they'd seen. And then there was public pledges to continue these change behaviors and also to support the young men and women as they were changing. So I will share a quote from a young father. So there, at one point in the program, a newspaper went to do a story on Real. So this is from one of the interviews they did. So the interviewer asked, if you could describe a real father in only one word, what word would you choose? And this father said, transformed. I think this is a project that transforms the foundation of the Acholi culture and the lives of young people who started having children early. So I promised to tell you a little bit about the results. So we found, interestingly, we tested it during the pilot. We did measures at 1 year and then 1 year later. And we found decreases in harsh punishment, decreases in intimate partner violence, decreases, improvements in couple communication, and also improvements in parenting behavior, positive parenting behaviors. These changes were sustained a year later. And then when we repeated this kind of trial, this experiment, in the scaled up or integrated version, we found similar results immediately after the intervention and 1 year later as well.
Before I turn to our next presentation, let me ask each of you, and I'll give you the mic. If someone was sitting in the audience and said, I want to do a fathering program, I want to outreach and make a commitment today, what's your best advice on how to start?
So my advice would be work with the young fathers that you can reach in your community or in your program. Understand what their needs are, what motivates them, what challenges they have. Maybe reach out a little bit to their wives as well, and engage them in the planning process.
I would agree with that. And I would also say reach the fathers where they are. From images results as well, from the survey that I was mentioning, we know that 78% to 92% of men go to antenatal care visits at least once. So that is one opportunity that you have to intercept them in the health sector, for example. So find them where they are and when they're willing to participate.
As Burai goes up to the podium, let me just say that I think planning for these programs, particularly during pregnancy, so that we're getting the father just as in the real beginning, is also a big part of the message. So let's move on to Central Asia and to the Kyrgyz Republic.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear conference participants. First of all, I would like to thank its conference organizers for giving such opportunity to speak about the Aga Khan Foundation experience in early childhood development in Kyrgyz Republic. And Aga Khan Foundation is part of the Aga Khan Development Network, and which works in over 30 countries around the world. And in order to identify the entry points for their activities in ECD, Aga Khan Foundation have chosen this bottom-up approach, which actively involved communication with the local government, with the communities. And so by identifying where people spend their days in their community health centers, at home, in their pastures with their families, or in the health centers or at schools, AKF gained a better understanding of the natural entry points by which it could engage with and mobilize communities. So currently, we have identified four programmatic entry points in our strategy, and which helps us reach families and children, especially the most marginalized. The first entry point, it is community work with community health workers. Community health workers, who are called primary medical health staff, these are key specialists in the health system in the rural communities in the Kyrgyz Republic. And they are the critical platform for reaching children in the first 1,000 days of life. Aga Khan Foundation implements, through the implementation of the project with the support of Johnson & Johnson Corporate Citizenship Trust and in partnership with the Ministry of Health, mobilized these community health workers to support nurturing care for pregnant women, newborns, toddlers, and families. And through this activity actually so directed to improve antenatal and postnatal care. And Aga Khan Foundation started establishment of the mother schools. Actually 24 birth preparedness schools, which is called mother schools, were established in remote oblasts in Kyrgyz Republic. These are Naryn and Osh oblasts. And in these mother schools build awareness among new and expecting mothers on the importance of the breastfeeding, nutrition, prevention of anemia, and some danger signs during pregnancy, the importance of fathers' involvement and children development. The second intervention point, this is community-based early learning through youth kindergartens. As you know, maybe majority of you know that Kyrgyzstan is one of the mountainous republics, and more than 80% of geographic area covered by the mountains, and majority communities live in the high altitude areas. According to the culture of life, during the summer time, for 3 months, communities move to the pastures with the livestock. And of course, the children accompany parents. But in those pastures we call Jaylo, they don't have access to the learning, ECD learning activities. To address this challenge, Aga Khan Foundation initiated pasture kindergardens or yurt kindergardens, which is very mobile. And communities carry yurts and establish these kindergardens. We provide these youth kindergardens with necessary learning materials, with books for children, manipulative toys, and of course we do capacity building of teachers. And now this initiative is becoming part of the system linked to the central kindergartens or community-based kindergartens. And it is becoming very popular, this model, and it is worth to highlight that by the international foundation led and established by the ex-president of Kyrgyz Republic, Madame Rosa Otunbayeva. This model is scaled up nationwide and by the communities themselves also initiated in some places. And intervention point 3, this is parental resource centers in the community spaces. Within the Reading for Children project, Aga Khan Foundation established more than 80 parental resource centers on the base of the school and village libraries and provided with reading materials. Actually, these places are the places where parents come with children to communicate, to obtain information, to share experience, and to use the resources for the development and for care. This is a place also for the interaction, good opportunity parents are having for interaction with children and with each other. Also, they have discussions, conversations about the pictures, about the stories in the books, and which helps and stimulates the speech development of children. And lastly, intervention point 4, this is the use of technology. According to the modern requirements, Aga Khan Foundation started launching development of mobile apps for the Android version. And along with the 2 mobile apps on early reading promotion and improving, Fun Kitab, which means fun book, and also a second mobile app, Reading by Playing. We created the 3rd mobile app with a local IT company, Colibri Studio, via messages from the Care for Child Development package and Science of Early Childhood Development are integrated into this mobile app. And this is accessible in the Google Play Market. This mobile application contains 3 parts. The first part is recommendation for the parents on child development through play and communication from birth to 2 years and above. After reading the recommendations, parents are requested to take the test on each age group of children. And in the second part of the application, one can see 12 short video spots on different topics, including environmental safety, child development, during the household work, role of the fathers, role of the siblings, grandparents, and the importance of reading, importance of early reading in the families, and also how to make use of the role of the play. And the third part includes animated instructions on making own toys from the available materials at home. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that scaling early childhood intervention is often thought of from the perspectives of the national level policy or program that trickles down to local levels. But Aga Khan Foundation took a different bottom-up approach, starting with a few local areas, listening to the communities, listening to the local government, and considering where the families and children's needs, where the families and young children normally went, and co-designing interventions with local government ultimately achieved their buy-in and political commitment. Though this took time, involving communities early and through the process means they now own their interventions and become advocates for embedding nurturing care into national government policies that are leading to scale. And we see how the families, community members, and local government are proud of being heard and proud of being engaged into the process and contribute to the system itself and national level policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you heard the key messages in her presentation, which is, we talk about coordination at the ministerial level, but I think her clear message and the message of that example is to have a bottom-up approach. It was kind of reinforced in the keynote this morning, the importance of listening to community members, having them be part of the process, and making that coordination happen at the local level. So thank you for that excellent example. So I'm going to now turn to Emily for our last, she's going to take us to Pakistan to talk about how youth are an amazing resource to the early childhood field.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm privileged to be here to represent my team from Harvard Chan School of Public Health, as well as the Aga Khan University in Karachi. And I'd also like to briefly acknowledge our contributors at the Yale Child Study Center, as well as Swiss TPH, and of course, a huge thank you to ESA and the Bernard Van Leer Foundation for giving us this opportunity to share our work today. So to begin, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the LEAPS program. LEAPS is a two-generational approach to early childhood education being implemented by the Aga Khan University in rural Sindh, Pakistan. And this program really has two main goals. The first is to provide access to quality ECEC services for young children. And the second is to promote opportunities for young women. And LEAPS accomplishes this by partnering with the government of Pakistan to deliver vocational training in ECEC to female youth ages 18 to 24 years. These young women, who are called Community Youth Leaders, or CYLs, receive a 4-week basic training program, after which they implement the LEAPS preschools in their communities where they live. And they additionally receive 6 months of on-the-job training and support from a LEAPS mentor. So those are really the major program components. I want to talk a bit more about how we landed at this idea of a two-generational model using youth. So the motivation for the LEAPS model is really rooted in the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And as many of you know, the SDGs really lay out a call to action for countries to address a number of human development challenges by 2030. And LEAPS aims to connect 3 of these SDGs. So SDG 4 highlights the need for quality education for all, and this includes early childhood education services for boys and girls. And this is an area that continues to need attention and investment in Pakistan, where just 23% of 4-year-olds are enrolled in preschools. And even where there is access, quality is quite low, and we see disparities by gender, between rural and urban areas, and by income. And a major barrier preventing expansion of preschool services in rural Pakistan, as is the case in many countries, is lack of a qualified ECEC workforce. So as mentioned, LEAPS seeks to address this workforce gap by training female youth as preschool teachers. And this then feeds directly into SDG 8 for productive employment and decent work for all. And this includes investments in training and employment opportunities for youth. And this is especially pertinent in Pakistan, which has an extremely young population. 64% of the country's population is under the age of 29. So demand for youth jobs and youth training is high. And here, again, we see that there are massive gender disparities. So for example, if you look at labor force participation rates for men aged 20 to 24, 85% of men roughly are engaged in the labor force, whereas if you look at women in this age group, rates drop to about 25%. So LEAPS seeks to provide much needed pathways to economic empowerment for female youth. And finally, LEAPS promotes work towards SDG 16 for peaceful societies. And this is because we see that there's evidence that investing in child development and youth development programs can prevent and mitigate conflict between groups and among individuals. And so all of this combines to create a really strong human development case in favor of youth-led early childhood education. I'd like to spend the remainder of my time up here highlighting some of the studies from our team's recent research. So in 2015 and 2016, LEAPS was evaluated through a randomized controlled trial, which enrolled 170 students in 9 preschools. And the study found that participation in LEAPS led to improved school readiness outcomes and improvements in executive functioning skills for young children. The team also conducted a qualitative research study with the community youth leaders, or CYLs, and found a range of personal and professional benefits to the CYLs as well, including expanded opportunities for employment and education. In the 2.5 years since the LEAPS trial has ended, 3 CYLs have gone on to pursue their bachelor's in education, and 4 CYLs have additionally gone on to attain other jobs in schools and office settings. We also found through this study that LEAPS had a kind of ripple effect on female youth, wherein CYL's participation improved outcomes for themselves, but it also led to benefits for other female family members and community members. So, for example, 2 community youth leaders shared that because of their family's positive experiences with LEAPS, they then supported other female cousins to seek employment outside of the household as well. Another young woman who was engaged in the LEAPS preschool as a volunteer has also gone on to pursue her bachelor's in early childhood education. And all of these young women attribute these recent opportunities back to the LEAPS program. And finally, we saw that LEAPS led to a number of mental health benefits for youth participants as well. And so to illustrate this, I'd like to share the story of one of our CYLs who I'll call Amina. Amina was 22 years old at the start of the LEAPS program, and she was married and had a 4-year-old son. She had suffered from extreme anxiety, but she had always wanted to be a teacher, and so when she heard about the LEAPS program, she attended the recruitment workshop, and she was selected for the vocational training program. At first, it seemed like her anxiety might prevent her from finishing her training, but through the support of her family and the support of her LEAPS mentor, she was able to complete the program and 10 months later was running a successful preschool. And in fact, her son was one of the students in her classroom. So Amina described her vocational training program experience as one of healing and a process of personal growth. Her family also confirmed that they saw a number of changes in her. So her husband said that her self-confidence seemed to have improved. Her family said the anxiety and stress levels that she had once experienced were much reduced. And so Amina described to us that she felt that LEAPS had really given her a sense of purpose, which is, I think, at the root of all of this. At home, she was able to better care for her son. At school, she enjoyed seeing children learn and grow, and in the community, she felt like she was more respected, especially among mothers. She shared with us this quote, "I used to be sick all the time, but since starting my work in LEAPS, I am well and at peace. Thank you."
Again, we want to see this put into action, the whole journal. We're going to be asking you to do an evaluation of the journal. We want input. I've already gotten several people that have come up to me and said, can I write an article on so-and-so? After their sessions, we are always looking for new content that can really exemplify what I think you see here. Early childhood is not one thing. It's a whole array of things. And what I'm excited about this issue is that you see things from health, you see things from education, you see articles that are really about social protection, and really it takes all of those areas to make a difference and to make an impact, both at the national level, but certainly at the global level. So I welcome your reading the journal and reviewing it. Thank you for all the support you've always shown me throughout my many years in the field. Thanks again for the panel.